Hello, everybody. Good morning. Sorry for being late. So, yeah, people are coming in. While people are coming in, let me start this panel, this plenary panel, the second panel of our conference of the second day. My name is Sergei Guriev. I'm a provost at SNSPA and co-chair of the permanent design team, which was created by my predecessor, Guillaume Plantin, and Carsten Schneider, who is with us today. The panel is on the policy landscape and challenges of establishing financing long-term strategy of European University Alliances. And today we have a very impressive panel with us. I will introduce the panelists in a second. Some of them are online. We are in France. France is not the only country which has train strikes, but one of them. And I'm looking around the room. I know some people have strikes even outside European Union. So unfortunately, some of the panelists could not come in person. So the issue we are going to discuss is related to the challenge of CIVICA Research project. CIVICA Research, as many of you know, is a project which is funded through a special call, Science with and for Society. It was launched 2.5 years ago in January 2021, and as other projects in this call, there are 17 projects like this. It will finish in December 2023. I'm looking at colleagues around the room, and I think everybody can say that that's been a very productive 2.5 or 3 years. And everybody is asking the question, what can we do? How can we actually proceed to continue our research cooperation within European University Alliances? Not just CIVICA, but also other alliances. And today with us, we have several representatives of alliances, in particular, my co-chair of permanent design team of CIVICA Research, Carsten Schneider, who is a prorector for external relations, professor of political science at CEU. He is also not just a member of and co-chair of permanent design team for CIVICA Research, but is also a member of steering committee of CIVICA. We also have online Ludovic T. Lee, who is a vice rector of University of Poitiers. He is a coordinator general of EC2U Alliance, and his work on this project already for EC2U Erasmus Plus project. He's also coordinator of Science with and for Society project, which is in this particular case is called RI4C2, and chair of 4EU2, which is a group of pilot 2 alliances. He's a chair of executive board of Coimbra Group of Universities since 2015, and member of several expert groups at the Commission in both DGs that are implicated in teaching and research. He's a professor of physics, and he still is active in coordinating research projects, international research projects, mostly in nanoscience. With us in presence, we also have Eleonora Zuola, who is an expert on European and national partnerships at the Research Innovation Department Sorbonne, where she is part of Work Package 1 for Train for EU Plus projects, which is also Science with and for Society project. She's also seconded to the Ministry of Higher Education and Research in France, and she's in particular a board member of European Association of Research Managers and Administrators. Also online we have Nicole Berkel, who worked at Gutenberg University in Mainz as an EU liaison officer for many years. She worked on preparing proposals for EU funding with researchers, and in the last few years she was also part of a European Alliance for TEM. There she worked on research innovation and transfer projects. She worked on FORTEM, that's the name of the alliance, FORTEM Academy for Early Stage Researchers. She's also worked on professionalization of research management, and she is therefore also involved in the work of European Association of Research Managers and Administrators. There she is involved in the Committee for Professional Development and Recognition. And last but certainly not least is Manuel Alejo, who is the head of Unit A2 in DG Research and Innovation in the Commission. He was previously Assistant Professor to Director General of this Directorate General in the European Commission. This is the Directorate General that has funded the Science with and for Society. That's the Director General that funded the research alliances, including CIVICA Research and other research parts of European university alliances. Now, I wouldn't say that we don't have a research part in Civica Erasmus Plus project. There is always a work package there which funds research activities, but indeed the main question for us today is do we think it's sufficient? Do we think that we need to go further in looking for longer term solutions to our challenges, how we can continue and invest further in cooperation in research subjects of our European University alliances? And this is the question that I would like to address to my colleague and partner in CIVICA Research, Carsten Schneider. Carsten, what do you think we should do now when the CIVICA Research is coming to an end?
Yeah, thank you, Sergei, also for organizing this event, and I have learned a lot, in particular also in the session before. So many things I'm going to say have already been said, and just like in the previous session, there was not given a definite answer to this very pertinent question. I don't think I will have that answer, but I will try. But let me first start that, you know, Erasmus Plus funding was not the best vehicle for building a research strategy and a research infrastructure for alliances. And there were two reasons. This was too little money, and the type of costs that could be covered weren't adequate. And this, I think, is by now a well-rehearsed song that we have sung in the past, and it doesn't make it less true, but it's not so helpful for the future. So what should those of the alliances who want European alliances to thrive, what should they do? And among the list of actors that want alliances to thrive, I mean, I enlist the members of the alliance, us, the Commission, and probably in principle the member states, but maybe we can have a discussion whether or not they really have such an interest in having alliances thrive also in research or in general. Because sometimes I hear that this is a strategy forward, that member states should carry that forward, and there are some problems that I would want to discuss later. So, but before we ask what we should do, the question is why should we do it? So why is it that research is a sine qua non and so fundamental to alliances? And I have three mutually not exclusive and probably also not so self-evident reasons for them, and I guess you share all of them. First, research is what universities do. Without this, alliances lose their distinctive feature. There are many other entities that can do what we do if we don't do research.
Universities also do piano.
Yes, and probably, yeah. Is it always the same player, or is there a rotation? Anyway,
it depends on what you're going to say. If you speak well, they will also sing.
Okay. So, and the second non-trivial reason for why research, without it, we are in trouble is without research there is no education and no civic engagement. So research feeds into all these activities, and in Civica, this fact has materialized in the governance structure where we have this permanent design team which sort of coordinates the research input into any other activities that we do in our alliance, and I just learned others do it in a similar way. And the third reason for why research is so essential is without it, you don't get a lasting buy-in from faculty. And I think without a lasting buy-in by faculty, you don't have lasting alliances. And many great things are done for student early career stage researchers, but by definition, they are going to leave. And so, and this is why we have to invest into faculty buy-in, as difficult as it is. And Giacomo, you rightly pointed this out in the previous session. But we can do it, and we have managed already quite a lot. So what should be done? To lift, I would say, not research off the ground in principle, but research up to the level of alliance, because a lot of research is already done in the members of these alliances. But what makes it an alliance research? And I'm trying to answer to what needs to be done. Allow me to first say what I think is not needed to be done. And I decided to dwell a little bit on what I think we don't need so much, because there seems to be a misunderstanding on the side of the Commission, at least some whom I have talked to, who misperceive what I think we need and thereby get a little bit defensive. So what do we not need is a lot of money. So look at this conference. This conference is the fruit of a grant that we received, and it's actually not only the Horizon grant, but there was also some input from the Erasmus Plus grant, and so you can do great stuff with little. This is one, but you know, of course we need more money, but I'm not saying we need money at the scale of huge ERC-funded grants. And the other thing we don't need is the kind of money that is currently offered in calls for research proposals at the European level. But just to be clear, of course, within alliances, we should apply to Horizon Europe grants, to ERC grants, Marie Curie networks, and so on and so forth. And I think nobody in the room would question or would question our right to do so. So we should do it. But this is not exactly what we need. We need more tailor-made funding opportunities. So the sums could be modest, as I said, but they must enable the alliances, and this has been said in eloquent terms before also, to enable, incentivize, keep ongoing existing research and to integrate, and this will be my last point, to manifest it in an institutionalized way. So how do we get there? And by the way, this is exactly not what you get from an ERC grant. They come and go. So they are not there to last. And if alliances there are to last, then we need sort of investment in infrastructure. And what is it that we are doing? And I'm speaking mostly for Civica, but I learned that others, not surprisingly, went down a similar path. So two things. And one is what we already do, and the other is what I think should be doing, is small-scale, low-entry barrier opportunities for collaboration, collaborative research. And we do this under Erasmus+. We do short visits, workshops, student-faculty research groups, lecture series, call for research proposals. We had 3 with, I don't know how many projects were overall 30-something funded and quite successful. These activities are essential to bring researchers on board, to create a critical mass and to identify the common strengths that we have. So it was not unlike, I think you said it before, that this is a top-down initiative. In a sense, yes, but we really made sure that it was as much bottom-up as we could. We said, what do you want to research on? Just tell us and just do it. So this is what these calls are good for. Okay, and I'm coming slowly to an end. This is all good and fine. But what is the goal of all this? So imagine, thought experiment. Instead of 100,000 euro, and we did 5 hackathons, say, we now have €1 million. Is it that we do 50 hackathons? Is it just more of the same? Or there should be something else. So and this I borrow from you, Sergey. You said it yesterday, I think, over dinner, that we want to create a network of free flow of ideas, of people, and this in itself is important, but what is the finalité here? And I think one thing we should explore is to institutionalize research in the form of, let's call them hubs, or a center, so the Civica Center for something, a topical center, or an institute. They would become centers of gravity of their own. They could apply to research funding, for which we would probably need a legal identity. That's why it was interesting to hear about your experiences there. Also to private donors, so we cannot rely on EU money if we want to get serious in research. But we need the help of the Commission to get there, to overcome both legal barriers and financial shortages, so seed money for us, so to speak, if you will. And if I conclude, the Commission started the alliances to test the waters for European integration in higher education. And I think we have identified now a wall that needs to be overcome if we want to further integrate. And this is how to collaborate and how to do research in alliances. Without them, my fear is that alliances will wither away, except those for whom research isn't important. There are some, but for us and many others, I learn it is important, and we need the help of the Commission, which is not only monetary, I think.
Thank you very much, Carsten. For all of us who try to hire people from other countries, we know that there are very important institutional barriers. For example, hiring a German academic with a pension to France, where the pension system is different, is always a challenge. Something like this we discussed at dinner. Thank you very much for this frank account of what we've done and what we want to do. I would like to ask Nicole the same question. What should be done after December 2023? What do you think? Who should do things and how we should do things?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me here today. And sorry that I cannot be on site, but I wasn't able to travel on such short notice. So, as you know, I stepped in this discussion at a late stage. So, I would like to start with a little bit introducing what we have done so far, because that is the basis for to say what we will be asking for in the future. So I would quickly like to introduce the history of the research mission in For Them to you. I will of course speak a little bit about financing, and I will conclude with some kind of a Christmas wish list we prepared. So I am involved in the For Them Alliance, a network of in total 9 universities from all over Europe, mainly since the preparation of our SAFS project, which is called in our case Fit for Them, starting in 2020 when I was asked to coordinate the application and the project itself together with the Vice President for Research and Innovation and Early Career Academics at Mainz University, Stefan Müller-Stadt. And I have to admit that, at least for them, at the very beginning, it was a little bit of a challenge to run this project in parallel to the main activities of the Alliance due to the different funding schemes, different people, different lifetimes, approaches to project implementation, and so on and so on. And as a research manager, I wasn't so much an expert for educational issues and student-related topics, but now I was to some extent responsible to guarantee that both projects would create as much synergies as possible and follow the same overarching strategies. And when I was realizing what we would be working on in Fit for Them, I was on the one hand very excited, but at the other hand, or at the same time, I was a little bit worried that at the end of the 3 years we would have produced a lot of agendas, policy papers, strategies, but that all of them would not be able to develop their full impact in the lifetime of the project. And that's to some extent true at the moment. So we have implemented a lot and we did what we proposed to deliver, but the real impact will show in the future. And as it was unclear how the research mission would be funded after the SWAS projects, very early for them, we started discussing how to bring the main actors, or bring our many actions related to the research mission to the second funding period of the Alliance as such, under the umbrella of Erasmus Plus funded activities. So to be able to continue at least part of what we have started and to build on our results. We now have 5 missions in For Them, and one of them is the Research, Innovation and Transfer mission with 2 linked work packages, a joint research services and policy office, which will take care that our results and agendas from Fit for Them are implemented. And we established For Them Academy for Early Stage Researchers, focusing on doctoral students, postdoctoral researchers, including, for example, open science trainings, and a journal, and many actions related to career development and assessment. and building a community of early stage researchers. You talked a lot about that already in the last session, so I will not go into detail. So a lot of things were already done, but that doesn't mean, and now I come to financing, that doesn't mean that for them we are not worried about how to sustainably implement and further develop the research mission without a clear perspective how to fund actions related to it. Erasmus Plus funding allows for structural measures, training events, conferences, workshops. You all know about that, but of course, as this is truly not the purpose of this funding scheme, less to really bring on board the really established researchers who, and sorry to say that in front of the Commission, are not so much interested in transformation modules and things like that. So that is also a challenge for us, as it does not really help to strategically and specifically initiate joint research projects. And above all, it doesn't give us the possibility to really implement and further develop the strategy and agendas at the university in a form and, let's say, in a time frame that would be desirable. So many staff members have to continue working on what was designed as agenda or transformation agendas now on top of their normal duties. There is a lot of commitment and we all put a lot of time and effort in that, but a fast impact cannot guaranteed like that. So we highly appreciate the suggestions coming from European Commission to the pathway to investment, and we're already on our way to follow some of it. But that means we continue writing applications constantly, and this again ties up resources in terms of time and stuff. Secondly, we can only develop the research mission really partly strategically to a limited extent, since Horizon Europe money is of course very competitive. And by the way, this is of course understandable and correct, but just to give an example related to the Excellence Initiative, at least for them that was not the exact program we would have needed, as there is a strong focus on the widening partners and the mixture of actions related to transformation modules and research focused on Horizon Europe missions or challenges. So that was not exactly what we would have needed at this time, and so, well, we didn't get the grant. But we go for MSCA, widening infrastructures, Digital Europe, and all the other programs. So to conclude, we are not so far from Christmas at the moment, so maybe it's allowed to give some kind of a wish list. We would like to still see a holistic funding that is flexible, that considers all missions equally, and also, of course, it must not be the case that the educational part is pushed back in favor for research-related activities, and we need a funding that allows the alliances to continuously and strategically continue what we have started in all areas. New projects with new tasks and new measures all the time does not really help us to really implement things in a good way. So to apply for pure research projects in a very competitive way is, on the other hand, fully accepted by everybody, and step by step I think most of the alliances already do that. But this is not exactly about the real transformation we are asked to drive forward, also by European Commission. So I think this is what we need. We need a flexible funding scheme. And I would stop here. I think we will go more in details about some of the things in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Indeed, as Carsten and you have said, it's very hard to impose something on researchers, and even transformational agenda, which we all need. We all know how hard it is to force researchers to work on things that they are not immediately interested in. Yet, as a society, we're interested in transformation, and we know that sometimes you can incentivize researchers by offering resources, and this is what CIVICA Research has done reasonably well. And I agree with you, and I agree with Carsten that we want a Christmas wish list to continue doing that. Our experience with the excellence application was, I would say, similar. Unfortunately, that is something that was not unexpected. But indeed, that was for people who've not written excellence application. That's a special call for application.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm here on behalf of 4U Plus Alliance, and in particular the coordinator of the Alliance as delegated by its rector, Sabine Botan-Rousseau at Sorbonne University. So what I can say to answer that question is that with 4U Plus, we have contributed to the 29th September statement about the committed to making the initiative a success in the long term. And we also sent an input to the European Commission on the investment pathways document. And in that document, what we say for the alliances in general, and our alliance in particular, is that we call for the establishment of a holistic, adequate in amount, integrating and long-term funding across all the missions of the alliances, which are research, education, research, innovation, education, but also service to society. And actually, we also wrote a few words about the SWAFs, in particular, I mean the research innovation side of the alliances. On research specifically, as you were saying, incentivizing researchers with research funds, actually this is what we wrote. We wrote that actually the SWAFs did not fund research and innovation activities per se. And this is particularly relevant because the SWAFs were an institutional capacity building, had an institutional capacity building approach. They were about institutional transformation of research and innovation. They were not about research as such. So they funded human resources, considerations about research careers and so on, open science discussions and changes among universities, strategic agenda, infrastructures and so on, but not research innovation activities per se. So when we are talking about this, it's not only that we need more funding. We have already invested a lot of funding with universities' budgets, but also national budgets, because we are referring to the member states' commitment. And actually, when we were speaking about this presentation with a colleague from Copenhagen who is in our alliance, he said something that I would like to quote, is to make alliances sustainable, we need to build interest towards the alliance internally, we need to have funds, sufficient funds, and we need to have capacities. So I would not like to repeat what I've already said in the previous panel, but actually, as we said, we have invested a lot in capacity, and to make that meaningful and also not effortless for all our communities, we need continuity, we need sustainability. So we need tailored funding, not to fully fund what we do, but to co-fund. And this is very important to underline that it's top-up co-fund. So, of course, a SWAFs-like instrument is for area activities with the percentage of funding for area activities in particular is called upon from our side. But also a more general reflection and approach to a more holistic funding, transdirectorate, if you want, or something that could cover all the missions of the universities that we are currently involved in.
Thank you. Thank you. Now it works. Thank you. Thank you, Eleonora. Same question for Ludovic. What's been your experience and what is your wish list, and what should we ask and whom should we ask for further support?
Thank you very much, Sergei, and my apologies again. I was supposed to be with you in this room, and unfortunately, as you said, some strikes happened, but I'm delighted to be online, and I hope it will not diminish my contribution. Just like Nicole, actually would like to maybe intervene at this point, let's say, through two parts. I will first exemplify how the CPU Alliance and its SWAFs project, I4C2, have really already invested a lot and created impact on research and innovation by providing some examples. And then I will, in my second part, turn into the more general discussion about policy and the need for basically the whole initiative itself. Well, regarding the CPU Alliance, I've been involved in its design since the beginning in 2018, and actually the way we have built the EC2 Alliance was actually to look already at the research cooperation. Even if it was an Erasmus call, this is how we started, knowing that with time, research would be, and innovation would be really what really creates a glue among the partners. And how we have done this is actually we looked at all the scientific production of the initial 7 universities, and we have noticed that they were actually already existing in the past decade. So we talk about 2009, 2018, more than 1,220 something articles jointly published between at minimum two universities and up to 5. And when we looked at how they were clustering into topics, we realized that we had already some 3 important clusters that we could somehow connect with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we noticed that actually we were already cooperating a lot in the SDG 3, good health and well-being, the SDG 4, quality education, and 11, sustainable cities and communities. So because we knew that the pilot phase would be very quick, we wanted to be efficient from the start, and we decided actually to focus first on the 3 SDGs. And we created what we call the virtual institutes, which are, let's say, some sort of labs without walls between the different universities, where actually we combine all the missions together. For the education side, we have created joint master programs, which are each on 1 SDG, so interdisciplinary, research-based education programs. We have, of course, researchers, we have innovators, students, etc. And the way we have supported initially, of course, when we look at the sequence of funding, is of course first through the mobility programs for researchers, but we added as co-funding, and actually the national co-funding was, in our case, very useful, joint PhD, co-tutor PhD, so that also really gave flesh, if I may say, to the virtual institutes. And we have, of course, through the Erasmus program, organized a lot of PhD workshops, summer, winter schools, etc. So per se, and this will continue, of course, during the next phase. So just to say that indeed, already from the beginning, and I know this is the case for many alliances, research and innovation were in the DNA of the alliances. Then came the SWAX project. In our case, RI4C2 stands for Research and Innovation for Cities and Citizens. We have decided, maybe it was a bit ambitious, but that's the way it was, we have decided to actually address all the so-called transformation modules. But I would like to mention 3 of them today, because I think they really belong to this long-term strategy that we need to build. The first one was actually to create a joint R&I agenda. I should say that being part of the Pilot 2, our SWAX project will end only in August 24, so we still are developing and we still have time ahead of us. This joint R&I agenda, many of you have said it is actually a very challenging aspect, because we know that researchers will buy this type of initiative if they really find interest and believe that they are involved from the beginning. So the way we've done it is actually we have launched a massive survey to all the research community, PhD students, researchers, senior management, to already see if in addition to the 3 SDGs, there were topics that they were interested in to work and to promote cooperation with the institute partners. And in the end, we have taken this on board, and we have now developed the whole strategy with the biosectors for research. So we need this combination of researchers through the bottom-up, but as well, of course, at the moment, at some point, we need to involve the senior management to institutionalize. This has been said many times, this need for institutionalization. With this now, we will select new SDGs, and actually some of them have been already included in the new phase, which will be starting very soon, and will be renewed. And we will create, because it works well, this new virtual institutes. That was one of the first TM, transformation module. The second one is about enabling joint infrastructures, research infrastructures. And for this as well, it is very difficult. And we have started with a mapping of all the national regulations and European regulations that enable or actually limit the possibility to share, practically share, for instance, sharing the costs, how do you involve other external researchers, etc. And actually, of course, we have seen, this is not a surprise, that the heterogeneity of the national systems is also not in favor. So we need now from these recommendations to see how we can approach this at the level of the Alliance, probably by designing our own rules for sharing infrastructures, but there as well, clearly there is a need for, let's say, a sort of EU harmonization. The third is about the tools, the common tools, and in particular to promote research. For that we have created, and it will be soon launched, a sort of IT platform where researchers can find all the labs, all the researchers for the whole Alliance, and they can search to find a partner, and we will have the research support managers who will then enter into the play and help them preparing a proposal to this call, etc. So we see that actually they are very much related to the capacity building that we can have together to create these tools. I will then, in my conclusion, see what we can do with this and from there. The second part is, I would say here, I will mostly focus on the role of this informal group of the alliances, the 4EU, 4EU 1 and 2. Some of you are involved in this, and you will see what I'm referring to. I would like to mention that indeed this idea of investment pathway is something which is very important for the alliances, and we have from the beginning and recently we have reiterated this call that indeed R&I should be very included in this investment pathway, and this has been said as well many times. Our universities, our institutions cannot basically separate their missions. It cannot be education alone, it goes together with research and innovation. So we clearly need that there is an equal footing for all these dimensions, also on the political and financial support. So this is actually very, very important for the sustainability of the alliances, because only funding a part of their missions will not allow this long-term funding. And I would like to add as well that usually in academia, our worst or best enemy is actually uncertainty. And this is why we keep repeating that we need to know how and what will happen after the current period, the next period, because indeed we are investing a lot and we invest for the long term. And of course, if we are not sure that there will be a long-term political and financial support, this will clearly limit the wish, the will to invest also ourselves as co-funding. The second aspect, also related to 4EU, we have done recently this exercise, and it will be soon published, to list all the activities that are promoting synergies between education and research. And actually, when we first set, and here really the 40 plus alliances have participated, and we ended up with a very long list of very interesting and diverse type of activities. We have already somehow communicated this list to the DGRTD, and in particular the unit from Manuel, and actually the feedback was very positive. So now we are a little bit shaping this into a more, let's say, policy-oriented paper, but I can already tell you that it is absolutely incredible to see the diversity of these activities that are intrinsically connecting education and research. So, to make the long story short, I think that my main message at this point is actually we need more support to the capacity building. And not just because we need it as alliances, but because this capacity building is also of potential very high impact to the whole era. There are a lot of aspects which are not yet fully optimal, let's say, in the era, and capacity building through the alliances could be one of the game changer. And this cannot only happen through widening activities, because we have seen in the FARS project that we also, and I say we because I'm from a country which is a non-widening country, but all countries learn from each other. And in particular, in most of the FARS project, I believe, the non-widening country partners have learned a lot also from the widening country partners. And of course, I'm sorry to say, yes, we do need money for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ludovic. Now when we have approaching Christmas and everybody has produced a Christmas wish list, we are coming to the Santa. Manuel, you've seen the wish list, and the good news, I think, for DG Research and Innovation is that everybody's emphasized that research and innovation is key to any university mission, and education cannot exist without research and innovation, which makes your Directorate General very important. Since your job, since your unit is supposed to spread excellence and research careers, this is the name of the unit. What do you think we can count on? What do you think we should do? We understand that science with and for societies, a lot of people on the panel use the abbreviation SWOPs. So for people who are not very familiar with the abbreviations in this particular area, this is science with and for society. This is the research parts of the alliances which were funded by Manuel's Directorate General. So what do you think what happens after December? What should we do? What is your advice to you? And again, if you have some additional pockets of money, you've seen that everybody would be very, very much open to that.
Thank you very much, Sergei, and thank you all for having me today. I see it's a sunny day in Paris, not the case in Brussels, unfortunately.
We are also sorry, Manuel, you cannot hear the music. The jokes I've been making on pianos is because outside students are playing piano. It's also very beautiful music, and if you want to turn on music in your office, we will also understand that.
Indeed, thank you very much. I'm tempted, is all I can say. I mean, first of all, I'd like to thank Carsten and Nicole and Ludovic Eleonora for their comments, because for me it's very, very useful to hear the precise experiences that colleagues are having in their different areas and their different activities, and the experiences are very often quite different. The alliances are quite different from each other, the purposes, the activities, so this kind of diversity is very, very important for me to, and for my colleagues to be very aware of. And indeed, it's also challenging then to address the different concerns, because they're often very, very different, and I wouldn't say incompatible, but not necessarily all adjustable. The Christmas list, of course, I know about it. I've heard it before, as you can imagine. I know it very well, and it's good that I know it very well, because that is what we are trying to do when we establish the new governance for the European research area. We wanted we wanted representatives of universities, of alliances, of other stakeholders to be involved directly in the discussions, rather than us listening to you and then going away and doing something that you look at and you can't quite understand exactly why we did things in a particular way. So for us, it's very important to have these discussions directly with you, and this is why we established this subgroup in the ERA Forum on the action on universities that for some of you and Ludovic, for example, are very active in. And the questions and the discussions that we've been asking are exactly what we are here talking about today. What are we going to do for the future? How are we going to do it? Let me start by making some comments about the more remote future, about the faraway future. And by faraway future, in my professional life, I'm talking about the post-2027, which is the next framework program. Anything beyond that for me doesn't really exist. Professionally, I mean. So in the future, we need to reflect what we are going to do in terms of funding for research, generally speaking. Do we do something still very much at the beginning, certainly not in the era form, because this is still far away in a sense, and we need to have our ideas first internally. But it's important that I point out a specific issue when colleagues talk about a holistic approach. I'm not saying that I don't disagree with the holistic approach, of course I do. In an ideal world, that would be what we would be doing. But it's very important to realize that we have to conform our action to the constraints that we have in the treaties. And the treaties foresee different competences for education and for research. This may seem a trivial, legalistic or bureaucratic consideration, but in fact it is a political issue, because by adopting and drafting the treaties in this way, the member states essentially are saying that they want a type of action in one policy and a different type of action in another policy. And we know this very well. We know that research is a much stronger, if you like, competence in the European treaties. It is a shared competence, which means that both Commission and Member States can act, or both the Union, not the Commission, the Union and the Member States can act. And this is not the case with education, as you know. Education remains a completely national competence, and there are supporting measures that the Union can take. So this means that when we're talking about funding for the future, we need to take this into consideration, and whether or not it is feasible to have this holistic approach, as some of you have described it, in having a sort of a mix between research and innovation funding. Again, I'm not prejudging the future in the sense that, of course, there are always solutions, and we can always come up with creative ideas. But at the back of our mind, we should always keep this in mind, that ultimately we have different approaches, different regimes, different policies, and that this was deliberate from the side of the member states, and this is a deliberate policy. And I'm not qualifying it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's desirable or not desirable. For me, it is the fact that I have to live with, and the legal framework that I have to work with. On what we are discussing now in the Action 13 subgroup, I think the discussions have been very interesting, because a lot of the questions that you're asking have been asked also. The group have come up with a number of recommendations, and there is a meeting indeed, I believe this week in Paris, next week in Paris, we're already on Friday, and of this subgroup. And I think it is interesting to look at some of the ideas that are on the table to be pursued in the immediate. You've mentioned, some of you, the Excellence Initiative for Universities under White. I think it's important to point out that, first, that this idea was in the Horizon Regulation, and it was certainly part of the political agreement in the Horizon Regulation that we would pursue this kind of initiative. Under widening, we have a very, very constrained framework, and again, this was the political agreement in Horizon Europe. Widening was always a very controversial part of the program, because it pursues a very specific objective of addressing the R&I divide in Europe, and so we have to be very careful with what we do under widening. And this initiative that we call today the Excellence Initiative for Universities, I think the official name is a bit longer, is precisely responding to that. So that is something that we will definitely continue, and we think it's very important as an initiative, and we see that the results are quite positive. As somebody mentioned, I can't remember who, of course this is not only for widening countries. We have also participants in these projects from non-widening countries, and that's of course the nature of these projects. They're collaborative projects, and that's how we want them to continue. But of course I understand that this is a very specific kind of instrument, and does not respond to the broader ambitions that Nicole and Eleonora and Carsten and others were talking about. And also to the issue of certainty and of stability, which I certainly agree and understand is quite important. There is currently an instrument in our work program that can be used in this regard, and that we want to encourage to be used in this regard, and that's the program level collaboration, what used to be called in the previous program the ERMETs. These are instruments that bring together member states for joint funding initiatives, and they are, from the substantive point of view, completely neutral. That is, they can be used for any kind of purpose. They're a framework that can be, they're an instrument. And we do want member states to make full use of this kind of instrument, also in order to test whether this is a feasible type of initiative that could be developed further for the future. Again, we're talking here about thinking about options for the future that can combine EU funding, national funding, also mobilizing national funding, because this is essential. We know that EU funding is very useful and important, but it is still a drop in the ocean of research funding in general. And I think that we haven't really exhausted our creativity in developing means of funding, of combining funding, and of looking at more stable schemes for the future. So that is a direction that I would certainly like to go in. For example, using this program level collaboration as a catalyst for such initiatives, but also helping us reflect in terms of the future program on what could we do and what could be developed. One last word, and probably I'm being a little bit controversial or provocative, but since I'm on screen, I feel safe. The idea to have a part of the framework program dedicated to funding specifically for universities or even for alliances is a very delicate proposition. And I could see us having very difficult discussions with the member states in the program committee about such initiatives, because the first thing that they would reply is, well, the whole program is open to universities and to alliances. What's stopping them from applying? Now, I know that this is the reply to this question is much more complicated, but I think we also have to be aware that it's very, very important to make the case when we want to develop a particular funding instrument that is going to benefit a certain group or a certain target. And I'm not saying it's not justified, but I do think we have to be careful when we're thinking about what we could develop for the future. So I do look forward to the meeting next week in Paris. I will not be there, but I will have two colleagues from my department there. And again, for me, it is very important that we develop these instruments, that we develop these solutions, that we think about these things together, that it's not the Commission doing this alone, and that we try to respond to your very, very legitimate concerns and wishes, and hopefully Christmas will not be so bad.
Well, hopefully this Christmas will not be bad, and not the Christmas 2028. So, thank you very much, Manuel, for being creative and for taking into account the concerns we have. We now have about half an hour for questions from the floor or from the panel. If you want to add to wish list and ask questions, pose questions to Manuel or to each other, we have time for this. Sorry? Yes, Ludovic, please go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted actually to follow up after Santa's last remarks. Sorry, Manuela, I'm talking about you. To continue the joke on Christmas and so on. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And there is nothing controversial in the final statement you made. I mean, myself as a researcher, I would just hate that actually we somehow create this divide between traditional cooperation projects and basically everything which is related to alliances. And this would actually also diminish the interest, I believe, of the alliance themselves. But however, what we should try, and this is why I also very much appreciate your comment on the fact that we have probably not yet exhausted our creativity altogether. I mean, the Commission, also the Member States and the sector, is I don't see a very strong opposition in creating, or let's say that there is no reason that we could not find some instrument or instruments, plural, that could allow at the same time to provide the capacity, the possibility to continue to fund classical bottom-up excellent research cooperative projects, and to continue, or continue in this, continue with the fact that we have started through the SWAPS project, but I mean, to also enable this capacity building cooperation, because I believe that there are still so many aspects in the era, in the daily life of institutions, RTOs and researchers themselves, that are to be fixed or to be improved, let's say, that there is clearly room for improvement also on the capacity building aspect. I think that the era will really be at its full power once we also have created a true homogeneity into how the research careers are developed, how we can facilitate joint infrastructures, how we can also find solutions to really empower all the gender equality in research, etc. Basically all the transformation modules, which of course have been selected initially because they are making sense in this need to homogenize or to unite the whole aspects of the era. So if we could come up with some instruments that could basically have two entry points. One which is the one we know already for excellent research, bottom-up, etc. And that there is another possibility to really lift up the whole era through capacity building. I think it would be a real win-win and game changer. Otherwise, we'll continue to have patches on research careers, on research assessment, and all the very important topics which are currently actually taken by the Commission finally. And this is myself, I'm very thankful to the Commission for all these aspects which are currently taken on board. But they are so much dependent at the moment on national regulations, and even sometimes in some countries the individual institutions, that we need another way to move these things forward, and capacity building through the alliances could be one way.
Thank you, Ludovic. Manuel raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just need to see how I lower it now. There we go. No, thank you, Ludovic. I didn't go into more detail. Maybe I should have, but I agree entirely with you. I think you make an extremely valid point. I think that should somehow be a line for us to think about in terms of the future. We are also trying to apply that in the present already. So, for example, right now we are in the process of discussing, this is another action in the policy agenda, this is action 4, that I know you're also following this, about careers. And there are different components to this particular action, different activities going on. One of them is that we are currently under negotiation in the Council on a Council recommendation for research careers. I was there just yesterday in yet another meeting. We are getting very, very close to a final text. I have to say that the receptiveness of the Member States is extremely good. So I think very soon we will have a text adopted officially by the Council with this Council recommendation. This Council recommendation also is not just about the conditions of work and issues such as remuneration and others, but also about research assessment and even the fact that we don't have enough quality data on the careers of researchers, and this is something else that we also need to work on. I know that several stakeholders have expressed their concerns in this regard, and so we are working also in putting in place an observatory on research careers. But then the question is, you adopt such a document, and what makes the difference between a piece of paper or something in action? Our concern is then to translate this piece of paper in specific action. How to do it? Well, it's of course tricky because this is a non-binding document. These are recommendations, so member states are free to ignore them, and even to say, well, we agree with all of this, but then our institutions are autonomous, our universities are autonomous, there's only so much we can do. So we want to push a little bit from our side, and what we are doing in parallel is we are putting together a call for next year, for 2024, in order to actually implement this regulation, to call for a consortia to implement the different aspects of this regulation, even focusing on early stage researchers, who are sort of a group that also needs to be taken care of in particular. And so this is a first step in order to put in practice, or to try and stimulate institutions to put in practice what we are doing, what we are saying on paper. This particular call is open to all kinds of different institutions, but of course, at the back of our mind, we are thinking about alliances, because, and I think this will be obvious in the text, because alliances already have the kind of network and the kind of structure that we are looking for to make this a much more effective type of instrument. So this is just to say that indeed, I mean, we try to, what you were talking about, Ludovic, about trying to stimulate capacity building and trying to really stimulate transformation within the context of the European research area in general. We try to see where we can work in the different types of areas.
Thank you very much, Manuel. This is really, really important, and I fully agree with you. When you take an action like this, when you have a non-binding proposal, University Alliances is something that really can help you to advance on this. As a university manager, I can tell you that whenever we have several departments in a university, good departments are always telling the bad departments, you should hire better, you should publish better, because your reputation is also our reputation. So there, within a university, there is this collective reputation incentive for mutual policing. And that may also apply to university alliances, where we within an alliance want to maintain the same line, saying we will recruit in this way, we will assess researchers in this way, remuneration will be like this, gender equality will be managed in this way. We commit to procedures like this together. Open science, this is our policy on open science, collective policy on open science. And once a university alliance adopts a recommendation from the Commission, we together incentivize other alliance members. And this is where a university alliance is a natural partner for you to advance on recommendations that you mentioned. And it's great that there will be a call next year, so Christmas 2024 will be a good Christmas, I guess. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Yelena. Before giving my microphone to Yelena, I would just say that one thing which Ludovic has mentioned is very important. So, university alliances are not imposed from Mars; they emerge endogenously, and it's not surprising that we have a lot of pre-existing cooperation. That alliances that have been created, have grown out of existing cooperation already, and we in the room and CIVICA Research, we also have a huge network of co-authors before we created CIVICA, and this is completely normal. But indeed, if you put on the table more resources, more incentives to develop research infrastructure, of course that can reinforce this cooperation and create those synergies that we've been talking about. Yelena, please.
Thank you. Yelena Angelis from Stockholm School of Economics. But I'm actually asking my question with my other hat on as a research director in the Brussels-based policy lab, where we work a lot with DG RTD and in the past DG EAC. So the question is to Manuel, but I'm also keen to hear the opinion. I'm probably either Santa's helper or a Grinch who will steal our Christmas now. the Universities Alliances initiative is a pilot initiative. The whole idea of the Commission was to fund pilots. Pilots, by definition, are not perpetual establishments. So I've been observing the Commission's communication for a while now, so I'm curious. Have you had discussions internally on whether pilots are really pilots and you will make a decision that out of these 40+ alliances, some will be stopped at some point? Or will you allow market mechanisms and Darwinian approach to take over and us ourselves fight against each other and this way decide who is the best kid on the block? So apologies for being provocative, but I think it's an elephant in the room and at some point we will have to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. We don't fight, we compete. Manuel, how many will survive the 2 Christmas from now?
Thank you. This is like the immortal. In the end, there can only be one. No, not at all. Well, on the future of the alliances in particular, I don't want to get into that discussion because, as you know, this is the competence of the GEAC and my colleagues in charge of education, and I know that they are reflecting about all of this. We discuss with them, of course, but this is not something that I would feel comfortable now expressing views and giving you my personal opinion. More generally, I think Yelena makes a very good point. But I disagree with your definition of what a pilot is. We don't really use pilots thinking that they're going to be temporary or that they're not going to exist further in time. What we use pilots is to test an idea. And when we test an idea, if an idea is good, then it will last longer, potentially very long. But if an idea doesn't really work, then just discontinue it. And to me, this is what a pilot is. Now, I leave it to you to answer the question, was this a good idea? Were university alliances a good idea? Should we think and should we invest in somehow helping them to last longer and to develop more or not? But to me, a pilot is not something to be necessarily discontinued. And we have both cases. I have in my personal experience in the Commission, pilots that we developed that didn't really work, not very successful, we stopped them, and others that were quite successful, and then we continued them with more robust funding and policies. So it could go either way, but as to the assessment of whether you think alliances were a successful pilot, maybe I leave that to the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. The cheap response to your question would be to ask audience to vote on whether the alliance was a good idea, but as an economist I can imagine that you understand that people who don't think it was a good idea are not in the room. So we only have consensus here. Carsten, you wanted to say?
One contribution. I was struck, Manuel, by one thing you said. You said that listening to us, we showed that alliances are so different. I actually heard exactly the opposite. We do the same, we came up with the same solutions to the same problems, and we encounter the same wall. I don't oversee the entire sort of range of alliances, and there might be some that are different, but here in the room we seem to have full agreement of what the problems are. And the other point I wanted to raise, and it came up several times, and I see there is no way around it, is this co-funding between the Commission and Member States. One point to note here is that some, and probably not a few in number, alliance members are not eligible for that funding. My university would not receive funding from the Austrian government, nor would the EUI from the Italian government. So we are probably then the victims to this strategy, but this is probably something we should keep in mind.
Thank you. Again, bad alliances didn't come to this conference, so there are probably alliances which are not good, but we only have alliances who are proud of what they've done, and they responded to our invitation and shared the best practice. So again, as a scholar of indigeneity, I can assure you that we shouldn't be too happy to say that all alliances are equally good. Nicole, you raise your hand.
I actually think that Ludovic was first, but I wanted to directly respond to this aspect on lobbying on national level for more additional other funding, co-funding of the alliances. Of course, this is very crucial that the member states also co-fund and activities, but what we found out and for them is that the situation in the different member states is so diverse that it's very difficult to come up with one recommendation for them is going out and telling everybody. So, for example, in Germany we have quite a good co-funding, but we have to invent new activities, new actions. We cannot co-fund actions that are already started or whatever on European or with the European funding. Some of our partners are very, very flexible to use their funding, and some of them do not get anything at all. So this is a difficult situation when it comes to lobbying from alliance level on the national level, just as a remark.
Thank you, Nicole. Ludovica?
Yeah, I wanted actually to react to the question from the colleague in the room and the comment, well, actually more the question itself than the comment from Manuel, because I actually tend to agree with what you said, Manuel. And I will also maybe also comment what the Carsten said about the diversity of alliances. Well, first thing is we should remember that actually when we entered into the phase for applying to new funding phase, the so-called rolling out, some alliances from Pilot 1, and the same happened for the Pilot 2, did not make it. Which means that actually, yeah, there was some considerations considering whether or not they should continue. So some pilot alliances did not make it so far. So this has to be remembered, because I can easily imagine that this was quite difficult for them after the massive investment they've made during the pilot, which was very, very demanding. And actually, it's somehow a good thing. Of course, I said it because we have been renewed, like you, Nicole, and you, Civica. But I think it was actually good that still a large number of alliances could continue, because 3 years were clearly not enough to show the full capacity. And it would have been actually, I believe, wasted investment even from the Commission to not continue a minimum of period of 4 plus 2 years. And I think it was at the end of this second phase will probably be when we will have a better view on which model is really worth continuing to invest. And now I would like to comment what has been said on that we are doing all the same thing. Well, I strongly disagree here. Of course, in a way, yes, we are doing education, we are doing research, innovation, service to society, and a lot of things seem to be common, because basically there are some background or fundamental activities that are somehow similar. But the approach, the objectives, the way we interact with our local ecosystem, whether or not we also build a European scale ecosystem, is very diverse from alliance to alliance. Even if you compare two, let's say, comprehensive alliances in terms of research, or let's say the usual way to put this, research-intensive based alliances, they are also working very differently. Some will focus on one topic, some will be more comprehensive also in the topics, etc. So I strongly believe that although some ingredients may look the same, we truly have a diversity of models.
Thank you, Ludovic. There is definitely a difference, including a difference between disciplines, right? So when you do research in nanoscience, you need equipment. When we think about mathematicians, they need a pencil and eraser. When we think about philosophers, they don't even need an eraser, right? So the needs are completely different. And Zeynep, you disagree? Huh? Okay. Manuel, before giving you the floor to answer, I suggest that Eleonora, who wanted to ask a question, has the floor.
Yes, I wanted to connect a few things that have been said and about being concrete about what we ask is I completely understand that integrated funding is not possible. I'm also talking about post-2027. Integrated funding is not possible, but actually where only complementarity of funding is feasible, well, we think that funding opportunities should be at least aligned and predictable, meaning that we're talking about the SWAFs who's ending and then we'll have a 2 years gap. Erasmus Plus and SWAFs were not aligned, so we didn't start at the same time. It was difficult to create bridges. So this is maybe very petty things, but actually they, how can I say, petty things, sorry, but actually they influence the way that universities are able to deliver. So we really ask for that kind of structural funding and to avoid fragmentation and also the risk of having alliances spending resources and continuously applying to different calls and actually in the subsequent management of these projects, because this is very resource intensive and we talked about capacity and resources. We don't want to spend all capacity and resources in this, actually, because then it's not very efficient actually. So universities think also about the efficiency of the funds that they are spending. So this is something that is important for us.
Thank you very much, Eleonora. Before giving the floor to you, Manuel, I would add a question from myself. Do you think, you indicated the timeline of 2027, do you think also the change in the commission can also, next year, can also change the coordination between the two director generals? So, three questions for you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I start with that. So that is part of the reason that I can't really say much about the next framework program, not only because we're still far away from making the proposal, just to give you an idea, our current thinking in terms of timing is to have a proposal mid or second half of 2025. But in between, a lot will happen, including elections for the European Parliament and the new College of Commissioners and the new organization of the Commission and. So it needs, for the time being, I think it's understandable to all of us that we are still far away from that. But just picking up a little bit on Eleonora's comment, and which is a little bit what I wanted to get to, but through another way, if you like, was that I think it is very important. Eleonora was mentioning, well, we have these calls and then we have other calls, and what's the coordination between these? And I think, in a way, what you're saying here is that we need, before we start discussing what kind of funding we want or we need and how we organize the funding, we need to have a policy in place. That is, we need to decide what is going to happen, how is it going to happen, what exactly do we want to achieve. And I think this, and you see this very often, especially in the area in which I work, sometimes the funding goes in front of the policy, and then the policy has to run after the funding. And generally, that is where you see often difficulties of coordination of funding, of trying to figure out, what am I applying to, what am I doing here, how thinly can I stretch my resources in applications, in managing projects, etc. So I think you're completely right. And I think, if anything, this teaches us that this lesson that we need to really get the policy in place and in shape, and then think about the funding as a second step. And this is what we try a little bit to do with the Action 13 group, is to think about policy and to think about funding. As I say, about the future, I don't categorically say that combined funding is not possible. I simply say that we need to take into account the legal constraints that we have. But just one last thought, perhaps, that I need you with. My core business here in the Commission is the European research area. And what this means in very simple terms, of course, as you all know, is to have an area of free circulation of knowledge. And the reason why we need this in the first place is that unlike other large blocks in the world, Europe has a very fragmented research system, and we could also say an education system, if you like. And that's part of our richness, but that sometimes also is an obstacle to being competitive in the global stage. We know what's going on in the rest of the world. We see what the trends are if we compare. If we look at the figures of anything from investment in terms of GDP, from publication, from patents, etc., we see how stable Europe has been, how much China has grown, and we also need to think that we need to have a space, we need to have Europe, which is attractive, which is competitive, which brings in talent, and which can have its rightful place as an important place for science, for knowledge in the world. But I think this doesn't happen by itself, and we really need to develop the policies and the funding in order to make this happen. So for me, ERA, the European Research Area, is about addressing fragmentation, and alliances are a very good example. Although they don't come originally from the research side, they come from the education side. To me, they're an excellent instrument, and I think, I would hope, but this I say on a personal level, that this would be a trend for the future. When I said that alliances were very different amongst themselves, what I mean by this is that I talk to lots of alliances, as you can imagine, and when I discuss with them what they are about and what their objectives are, they're very different amongst each other. Not only on the substance of what they do, but on what they wish to achieve. And whereas some wish to develop joint capacities in particular areas which are very specific, others actually want to develop into a single large university with different poles in different European countries. Whereas some absolutely do not want to achieve this kind of result because they want to keep their identity and their institutional autonomy, etc. Others want to develop into larger entities and larger legal and administrative entities. And I think this is fine. I think this is good news that we have an instrument that allows this kind of discussion and allows this kind of evolution. And so if it depended on me, this would certainly continue in whatever shape or form the institutions want to use this tool, because it should be a tool more than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. This is really an important point, which was actually made in the beginning by Carsten, that we as University Alliances are great testing ground for thinking about free flows of ideas and people in European research area. And we've identified and sometimes successfully addressed barriers and problems in the functioning of this indeed fragmented research space. Just to reassure you, United States is also increasingly fragmented. You know that universities in Florida now function very differently from universities in Massachusetts and California. The only non-fragmented space is China. There you don't have any fragmentation. Communist Party is guaranteeing this. We are in France, where the timing of lunch is sacred as the right to have a strike. Yet we started late, so we still have time for one question from Giacomo.
I'm very sorry. So I'm separating you from lunch. So I'm Giacomo Calzolari. I'm Dean of Research at the European University Institute. And in fact, I just wanted to, advocate for the future of the alliances with two examples. And one is really speaking to what Manuel was saying before. I'm an economist. As a first step, when I started thinking about the alliances, a way to increase competitiveness through cooperations between potential competitors, as an economist, this didn't resonate kind of obvious to me, but I actually saw with my eyes that this is doable. And this is the example I want to bring, Manuel, to your attention. So thinking about practices to support research, within Civica, I experienced a kind of openness in sharing best practices in a way that I would never have a thought that could have been possible exactly between potential competitors. And the level playing field that is a process can create, not in 3 years, much more years, we need more time, is unique. And that's going to create a very competitive research area in Europe. So that's a tangible example that we really started to see in a few years, but it needs to be continued. We can't stop here. It would be really a pity. The second example I want to mention is early stage researchers and the possibility to create a networking for early stage researchers. Of course, there are many channels and tools in Europe for that, but there is very little that can really be operated bottom up with the involvement of early stage researchers and on interdisciplinarity, which is a difficult animal especially for early stage researchers. It's very risky, if you want, endeavor. And yet, through the alliances, we have seen involvement of early stage researchers in interdisciplinarity to the extent, again, I personally would have not thought possible to have. That's another experience that is, I think, unique to the alliances. And I frankly don't see tools currently available, other tools currently available in Europe for this type of endeavor. So I'm not asking for Christmas presents. I just mention it to practical experience that really advocate to the continuation of the alliances.
Thank you, Giacomo. I would like to add to that. I think it's a very, very important point, especially the second point. As economists, Giacomo and I know that we've created successfully European job market for early stage researchers. That's new. That didn't exist 10 years ago. That's something which has happened in the last 5 years. And before that, European PhDs and European recruiters would go to the United States in the first weekend of January. So you can imagine the carbon footprint of that. Actually, when we measure carbon footprint of Department of Economics here, it's about 1/4 of annual carbon footprint of Department of Economics. That trip in 2018 or 2019, that was horrible. Now it's done. We have a European job market. If you want to find a job, you're a graduate of a European PhD program and you want to find a job in Europe, you don't need to go to the United States. And we save planet with this, and we also establish European sovereignty with this. And I would like to thank the Commission for this, because much of that is because we now have funding, in particular in ERC, but also collaborative research projects. This is a great achievement in economics. Now, in other disciplines, this market does not really exist. In other disciplines, social science, I would say, doesn't really exist. And CIVICA Research has been really good for establishing this mobility of early stage researchers, helping them finding jobs in other social sciences. And this is a potential deliverable that our collaboration could actually produce in the years to come. Ludovic, I know you also need to eat. You are in France, right? So you remember that we have tens of people who are looking forward to a lunch. So the Commission is different, but you're in Poitiers. You have to remember that. Yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, actually, I would like to also acknowledge the fact that not only universities within an alliance cooperate, but actually it's also remarkable to see how alliances do cooperate also among themselves. For EU is, to my opinion, an extraordinary experience as well. Second comment, it's more like actually food for thought. While you will have food for your body, we should now think about how to transform the alliances into an international dimension.
So involving our friends outside of European Union, you mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Ludovic, and I would like to thank all the participants, Ludovic, Nicole, especially Manuel, who has more questions and more demands than others. I would like to thank Eleonora and Karsten and everybody in the audience for waiting patiently. And I would like to close this very interesting session with the hope that our cooperation will not stop, with the certainty that our cooperation will not stop even without SWAF's funding. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. And now I would like to say one more thing before lunch. Unfortunately, we have another thing to do, or fortunately, we have another thing to do, namely to announce the winner of the poster competition. So, yeah. And as a co-chair with Karsten, I would like to announce that the prize award for the best poster in the CIVICA Research Conference goes to Chloe Niborel from Stockholm School of Economics.
Yeah, of course. Thanks everyone for the prize. So I'm a 6-year PhD student at Stockholm School of Economics, and I presented a panel yesterday. And I'm looking for a new place to actually do the...
This is the European job market.
Exactly. So to pursue this thing on policing and migration. So if you receive my application, you should have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again. That was a ballot by secret, vote by secret ballot, so no collusion, and until this minute, I didn't know who the winner is. Thank you.
And thanks to Sciences Po for the conference, to Sarah, and everyone.
Thank you. It's not done, it's still lunch as promised, sir.